And good morning, everyone. Happy Wednesday morning to you, and welcome back to Morning Musings. My name is Don K. Preston. I'm the president of Preterist Research Institute of Ardmore, Oklahoma. I really appreciate you being with me. And as I've noted, our viewership is slowly climbing. Our subscribers are slowly climbing. We're at well over 7,500 subscribers right now. Appreciate that so very much. Listen, share the word, pass it on. For those of you who watch on Facebook, all right, be sure to like it. Be sure to share the videos. We need to get this word out, ladies and gentlemen. I get emails almost every single day from people who have been delivered from the bondage of fear, the fear generated by the dispensational world of the constant mantra. This is it. The Hamas-Israel conflict. This is proof that Gog and Magog is about to happen, or it's in the process. We're in the last days. The Great Tribulation is right around the corner. On and on it goes. Our study of the Olivet Discourse has dispelled so much of that. If taken seriously, all right, and believed, it's a liberating thing. So we're refreshing our minds, so to speak, of some things that we saw in our lengthy study of the Olivet Discourse, and I'm adding new material, all right? Some of the stuff that I didn't cover in our earlier, more lengthy discussion. We have come to Matthew chapter 25, 14 and following, about a certain man who is going to go on a long journey. And he gathered his servants and he gave talents to them. And he said, take care of this until I come back. When he came back, he judged those servants. I'm abbreviating things, obviously. Okay. I suggested to you yesterday that there's an absolute direct parallel between Matthew 25, 14 and following and Luke chapter 19 in regard to a critical element. And that's the motif of the absent master. In Luke chapter 19:11, Jesus told a parable in order to deflect the raging expectation that the kingdom was about to come immediately. A certain nobleman went into a far country there to receive a kingdom. So what do we have? Matthew 25, a master going away. Luke chapter 19, a master going away. Now, by the way, this entire motif of the absent master, and I said this yesterday, I hope you took it to heart. I hope you begun to study it out. I hope that you see the power of it, because this is incredibly important. I stated yesterday, let me say this again. Every single New Testament passage about the return of the Lord, and yes, we'll be talking about Acts chapter 1 next week. Every single passage that has to do with the return of the absent master is the promise of the return of Christ to judge Old Covenant Israel. This motif is found everywhere. Let me illustrate that very quickly. In a passage that we have already looked at, Matthew chapter 21, 33 and following, Jesus said, a certain man had a vineyard. He planted it. He dressed it. He fertilized it. He took care of it. And he let it out to workers. And then what did he do? He went into a far country. Oh, pardon me. Sorry about that, folks. Not starting over. He left and he went away into a far country. Let me turn over there and read this so that you just simply got to see these parallels in Jesus's parabolic teaching. I'm sorry, someone rather caustically told me the other day, Preston, you ought to study the parables. Have you ever studied the parables? And I literally could not help but laugh, because years ago I began writing a book on the eschatology of the parables. And the outline is still there. I add to it even still yet, but it would be a massive work. I'm never going to get that fully written. And so for this individual to just say, Preston, have you never studied the parables? Well, I'm sorry, it just struck me as funny, because yes, I've studied the parables quite extensively, and I love it. Okay, Matthew chapter 21. Listen to another parable. There was a landowner who planted a vineyard, put a wall around it, dug a winepress in it, built a tower, rented it out to vine growers, and went on a journey. Now, does someone want to argue? Would someone argue? Oh, well, now look, Luke 19, he went into a far country. Matthew 21, excuse me, he just went on a journey. Different parables. Do you see how ridiculous it gets? I mean, it's just profoundly terrible. Okay. So we have in Matthew 21 an absent vineyard lord, right? Is that a different master? Is it a different journey from that in Matthew 25, 14 and following? Well, let's see. In Matthew 21, he lets out the vineyard to these workers. They're given this great honor, dignity, and privilege to be the workers in the vineyard. Just like in Matthew 25, 14 and following, he gathers his servants and commits to them certain responsibilities and certain privileges. Does it mention vineyard? No. Does that mean it's different? No. You see, the attempt to hang on to futurism very often causes people to make truly ridiculous arguments. Absent master. By the way, I wrote an article on the absent master motif in what I called a short shot. It's on my website, donkpreston.com. Okay, just in the search bar, just type in absent master. And I do the correspondence between Matthew 21 and Matthew chapter 25. They're absolutely the same. Okay, now watch. Matthew chapter 21. Absent master. Absent vineyard master. Matthew chapter 25. Certain nobleman. Absent master. Goes in, he leaves on a journey. Just like the man in Matthew 21 went on a journey. Luke chapter 19. A certain nobleman went into a far country. Again, ladies and gentlemen, I'm sorry if this seems repetitious. It's so critically important. Are these different masters? Well, unless you can prove that they are, then how are you going to prove that they're different journeys into a far country on a long journey? How are you going to prove that? You can't. So the master gave his servants charge of the vineyard, charge of the talents, charge of the talents. Luke chapter 19. And in Luke chapter 19, he told those servants, occupy until I come. Who's going to come? That's Elphi, if memory serves me correctly, a form of erkomai, which is one of the most common words to speak of the second coming of Christ. Matthew chapter 21. After the servants killed the son and mistreated the earlier servant sent to them, Jesus challenged the Jews gathered around him. What will the master of that vineyard do when he comes? Elphi/Erkomai. What do you suppose that master was going? The master, the nobleman, in Matthew chapter 25, when he returned, is that a different return from Matthew 21 and Luke chapter 19? Okay. While he was gone, some of his citizens sent an ambassador after him to say to the emperor, by the way, this is based upon true historical facts. When Herod the Great died, Archelaus, his son, went to Rome, there to be bestowed to receive the kingdom. The Jews sent an ambassador to the emperor and said, we don't want this man to rule over us. So when Archelaus came back, having received the kingdom, what did he do? He judged those Jews who had said, we don't want this man to rule over us. And he killed them, several thousand of them. So what happens in Luke chapter 19? This ambassador from the citizens of the kingdom being received in the far country, they go to the far country, and they say to the king, and they say, we will not have this man to rule over us. But the king returns. And what does he do? Well, he gathers the men to whom the talents have been given. One of them had increased it. Blessed are you. Another one had increased the talents. Blessed are you. The third one said, well, you see, I knew that you were an austere man. I know that you reap where you don't sow, et cetera, et cetera. So here's my talent. You get it back. Well, the talent was taken from him and given to the others, just like Matthew 25. And then the master said, bring here those servants who said, we will not have this man to rule over us, and killed them. Folks, is that any different from Matthew 21, the servants who killed the servants sent to them to gather the harvest, who killed the son? And the master comes and judges them and destroys them. And by the way, when Jesus asked that crowd that day, what will the master of that vineyard do to those wicked servants? And out of their own mouth they said, when he comes, Elphi, he will utterly destroy them. And you can just, you can see Jesus kind of grinning, yeah, you're right. And he cites some Old Testament passages, Isaiah 8, Daniel chapter 2, Isaiah 28, that foretold the crushing of the resistors of the king. Amazing, isn't it? At the coming of the Lord. Who was it, ladies and gentlemen? Who was it that said, we will not have this man to rule over us? Oh, when Jesus was on trial, and Pilate says, behold your king, what did the Jews say? And it wasn't just that day, it was their continuing response after Jesus left, after Jesus ascended. We have no king but Caesar. The irony there just drips off the page. It just runs and floods off the page. They hated Caesar. They hated the Romans. But they would rather affirm, we have no king but Caesar, rather than admit that this Jesus, whom they had seen perform miracle after miracle, raise the dead, heal the lepers, give sight to the blind, feed the multitudes, they would rather reject him and kill him, and in so doing avow loyalty to Caesar. Unbelievable. So again, who were those servants who said, we'll not have this man to rule over us? It was the Jews. What happened to them when the master returned from his long journey? They were brought before him and killed. What was done to those servants in Matthew chapter 21 who abused the servants sent to them, refused to give the harvest? They were destroyed. What happens to those servants in Matthew chapter 25? They're destroyed. Folks, these are the same identical storyline. Are some details different? Yeah. Are we not going to give Jesus the latitude? Are we not going to give the gospel writers the journalistic latitude to say, well, here's a story, here's a story, here's a story? All teaching the same fundamental reality of the absent master, the return of the master to judge those who rejected him or mistreated his servants. Same identical story. So, at the return of the absent master, Matthew 21, who is he judging? Old Covenant Israel. Specifically in the text, the leaders of Israel that led them into rebellion. But you see, the leaders were representative of the people. You can't lose sight of that in Jewish thought. So it was the Jews being judged and destroyed, miserably destroyed. In Luke chapter 19, it's the Jews who rejected Jesus who are being judged and destroyed. How do we change that in Matthew chapter 25? I'm telling you what, folks, this motif of the absent master is absolutely incredible, and we'll have more on it next week. In the meantime, don't forget, on Friday, we'll continue, and we're trying awful hard to wrap up my response to Steve Gregg. We'll see where we're at. But again, don't forget to join Mike Sullivan and me for Preterist Apologetics on Friday evening and Saturday morning. You know, I have to record it and then post it and then repost it on Saturday morning so that it will get wider exposure. Join us this weekend, okay? Thanks for joining me. God bless. I'll see you on Friday.